Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm your host, Chip Flory. Glad that you're with us. Let's bring in Jim Wiesemeyer, Pro Farmer Policy Analyst.
Here we are.
It's good to see you.
Good to be here.
And we have with us Secretary Tom Vilsack, USDA Secretary. Secretary Vilsack, thank you so much for making time for us.
Happy to be here.
Glad that you are. All right. We've seen the Rural Prosperity and the Food Security Act from Senate Ag Chairwoman Stabenow, and we've seen the GOP framework from Ranking Member Bozeman. There's some differences here. Are those differences negotiable? And please start with the Title I on this one.
Look, I don't think we're close to getting a farm bill done until the folks who are negotiating the farm bill are realistic about what's doable within a constrained resource environment. The Republican proposal, whether it's the House version or the Senate version, essentially requires a significant amount of additional money coming into the farm bill in order to pay for all of the various promises that have been made, from reference prices to crop insurance premium assistance to all the other proposals that are contained in those bills. It can amount to over $50 billion of additional resources that have to be identified within the existing farm bill or new money coming in. The reality is they just don't have that. First of all, they're taking resources from nutrition assistance, which is a red line for Democrats. They're also essentially playing some fairly fast and loose with the amount of savings from reducing my ability and future secretary's ability to use the CCC. The Congressional Budget Office, we believe, is probably going to score that about $8 billion of savings. They need $53 billion to be able to make it work. So at the end of the day, if we're really serious about getting a farm bill done, I think we have to lower people's expectations and we have to really take a look at what is absolutely necessary in order to provide help and assistance to farm country. We're not there yet. I think Senator Stabenow's approach is more realistic and more reasonable. She's identified additional resources outside of the farm bill that Senator Schumer has promised would be available. So she's identified some real money to put into the farm bill. I think there's some serious concerns on the House side, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah, Jim, you've been studying the CBO score on the Farm Bill quite a bit. Does what Secretary Vilsack is saying make sense to you?
Yeah, he's in line. I think CBO actually increased the CCC savings a little beyond $8 billion, but you're right, Mr. Secretary. They are considerably below the projected funding that they need. My question is there any give in this area from both ends, from both quarters, on sensitive issues?
Well, I think obviously there's going to have to be give. I think that there is a genuine desire on the part of perhaps both Republicans and Democrats to see potentially to see the conservation resources that are in the Inflation Reduction Act moved into the Farm Bill with, and this is the big stumbling block, with the guardrails intact in terms of the directing it for climate smart agricultural purposes. If you take the guardrails out, then I think then you lose Democratic support for moving that into the baseline. And so I think there is an opportunity there for conversation. I think there's an opportunity to creatively use the CCC in a way that actually does provide some additional resources or capacity, but I don't think it's anywhere near $53 billion. Right. And as a result, that means that you have to lower expectations. Look, the reality is when you talk about reference prices, you're talking about roughly 22 commodities out of 130 commodities that we have that are covered by crop insurance. We're talking about the fact that nearly over 50% or so of those benefits go to the top 10% of agricultural farms in the country in terms of sales. There's a real serious question here, especially given the fact that we're seeing so many farms that we've lost over the course of the last 30 or 40 years. can we continue to sustain the number of farms we've lost? It's 544,970 farms since 1981. I mean, are we okay with that? Are we okay with losing 151 million acres of land that was in farming in 1981 that's not in farming today? Are we okay with the impact on rural communities? Not just this is one aspect of this. When you look at the fact that a disproportionate share of the military comes from rural communities, and now you see the military having concerns about whether or not they have adequate resources and people to draw from in terms of an all-volunteer military, and they're thinking about, expanding who can qualify and so forth. Oh my gosh, these are serious issues. So this is a long way of saying I think there's a way to get to yes, but people have to lower the expectations. They have to really look at what's going on in the countryside and tailor a farm bill in a way that responds to the challenges of more farmers, many farmers, not just a few farmers.
Okay.
Mr. Secretary, Senator Bozeman put out an interesting graphic last week on the overpayments, et cetera, in the SNAP program, and it was a rather large figure. Is there any wiggle room on maybe looking into that as far as better enforcement and moving some of that potential funding or not?
Let's be clear about that number. First of all, it isn't necessarily overpayments, it's also underpayments. The error rate has to do with under and overpayments, number one. Number two, that is a function of state government, and we are working with the state governments because they're the ones who administer the SNAP program. And there's an opportunity for us to work collaboratively with them to shore up and to begin returning back to where things were before COVID, where there were ongoing interviews and things of that nature. And that's going to happen. But that's not necessarily going to be the resources sufficient to pay for $53 billion of increases in reference prices.
Okay.
Probably.
Yeah, Secretary Vilsack, it seems to me that if there are an area where there is some agreement, it's that on conservation, market development, and so on. Would you suggest to Democrats and Republicans in Congress to start there, find that common ground, and then expand out the negotiations?
Well, I think you could get to yes pretty easily if the understanding was we'll move the balance of the IRA conservation resources into the Farm Bill with the understanding that the climate guardrails remain. I don't think there'd be any disagreement on the part of folks to do that. There's roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 billion left of what was allocated in the IRA that's available and there's tremendous demand and there's tremendous interest. We had 45,000 contracts last year, record number of contracts in the various programs. Yeah. And we've got waiting lists and we're hiring more people for NRCS. So there's a real interest there. I think you can get to yes there relatively easily. And I think there's probably a way that you can put some restraints or utilize the CCC in a way that generates some savings, but it's just not $53 billion. Let's get real about this.
Mr. Secretary, I don't give as many speeches as you do, but I give a few. I keep hearing farmers really like when you told them earlier that this biofuels area, climate change, could be the next revenue stream for agriculture. They're in the prove it to me stage. What can you tell them as far as the future path for that revenue stream?
Well, we're beginning to see products that are actually generating a value added. I use the rice product that was produced by Louisiana and Arkansas rice producers, getting a premium for having been producing climate smart. I'm told that there are dairies that are now lined up to get a value-added premium for potential export opportunities. I'm told that there are also a number of nut producers that are also now seeing increases as a result of climate smart practices. We're seeing, obviously, a particular interest in the sustainable aviation fuel. That's a new market opportunity, and we are in the process of working with Treasury and with the Department of Transportation and EPA to craft guidance for the 45Z tax credit, which is really the significant tax credit for individual and bundled activities on the climate smart side that will allow us to qualify ethanol that's produced from those crops to benefit from sustainable aviation fuel. That's a new opportunity. We're spending resources from the IRA to better align our tools to measure, monitor, and verify the results of Climate Smart, which is going to allow folks to qualify and participate in ecosystem service markets. That's a new revenue source. We're seeing interest in renewable energy in terms of trying to do it in a way that doesn't reduce productive agriculture, but it actually adds to productive agriculture. I was out in Colorado recently, hearing from folks who are now seeing solar panels being raised instead of 3 feet, now 10 feet, so that you can actually have dairy cows grazing underneath the solar panels. So the innovation, the creativity is there in order to increase the level of income that small and mid-sized producing farms can produce. That's at the end of the day, they're going to have to figure this out, because we can't continue to lose farms at the rate we're losing them.
Yeah, there's
some companies, Secretary, I'll let you go, Chip. I've got my lawn people by me. I'll let you ask a question.
Let me go here. In some of the solar startup companies, Secretary Vilsack, the lease offers that they've got are eye-popping. The highest one I've seen is up to $4,500. Are these solar startups, can they use money from the IRA, or are they using money from IRA to kind of bankroll some of these lease offers?
Well, from a standpoint of the individual farming operation, the REAP program basically pays 50% of the cost of the installation. There's a tax credit that will give you another 40% of the value, so 90% of the cost of an individual solar operation, a windmill, things of that nature, can be paid under the IRA. In addition, we are creating a vehicle in which the PACE program and the New ERA program are providing significant resources to RECs, to municipal utilities, to convert from fossil fuel generation and use to more balanced portfolio with renewables. So that resource, that's potentially a forgivable loan program that can significantly increase the opportunities in this space. And so if you combine the two, you have farmers basically able to create renewable energy on the farm, reducing their costs, excess energy then pooled with neighbors' excess energy, sold to the REC. Now you've got less expensive power in the rural areas, and you've got new income streams and lower costs for farmers.
Yeah. Are you hearing concern from the countryside about taking some very productive farm ground out of production for the solar farms?
Well, there's always that concern, but the reality is that that's not as prevalent as it may seem. Less than 1% of the land currently engaged here. But having said that, you're seeing new technology now being developed that will allow for productive agriculture to continue and still have solar on the farm as well. I mentioned to Jim just a second ago, if you raise the panels from 3 feet to 10 feet, you can graze underneath those panels, and you've got the best of both worlds.
And get an agricultural tax exemption in some states as well, right?
So it's the best of both worlds, and essentially it's the kind of innovation that we really need to focus on if we're going to be in a situation where small and mid-sized operations have a shot at staying in business. I mean, I don't want to get to the point, I don't think you do either. I'm pretty sure none of your listeners or viewers want to get to a point where we got a half a dozen farms in every county.
Right.
It's just that's not good for anybody.
No, gotcha. I've got a question. You mentioned the ethanol. Brazil maintained that 18% tariff on imports of U.S. ethanol. Should there be an official retaliation against that, or what do we do to offset that?
Well, I think we just continue. There's been ongoing conversations and negotiations with the Brazilians on a wide range of issues, and I think we still need to continue knocking at the door. And obviously, they want stuff from us. And the reality is, the way this thing works, you don't get from us unless you give to us. That's why they call it trade. I was just on a call today with my Chilean counterpart, where we essentially ensured a protection of our geographic indications, our utilization of common names and so forth, so that our cheeses and our dairy products can get into that market. So, I mean, that's how it works. So disappointing that we don't get progress, but we're not going to give up.
Okay.
On the GMO corn issue with Mexico, we have the lawyers from the two countries meeting, I know, pretty soon. Are you still optimistic that this can be rectified?
Well, I don't think it's actually, Jim, I don't think it can be rectified. I think basically the science is pretty clear. There's no safety issue here. Nobody's at risk from GMO corn. And it's fairly clear that it's not a science-based decision by the Mexican government. Our hope is that with a new administration, maybe there's a change of heart and a change of attitude about this. If there's not, then we have the USMCA process, which we're going through, in which we basically assume that there will be a finding that indeed there is no scientific basis and no reason for the presidential declaration limiting white corn going into that market. It's interesting to me that there is a substantial amount of yellow corn being sold that's GMO because their livestock industry needs it. Look, I understand what they're trying to do. They want to preserve the culture connected to white corn, which they're very proud of, and I understand that, but that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is just simply to explain to customers, this is Mexican grown corn, this is US grown corn, make your choice as a consumer and let the consumers decide.
You know, Mr. Secretary, you and the White House have indicated you're taking steps to help lower food costs and input costs for farmers. Can you detail some of those?
Sure. I mean, first of all, the good news is that grocery prices are moderating. In fact, the inflation rate for grocery prices is now less than 2%, and so it's below the 20-year average. So we're headed in the right direction. When we basically do the competition agenda, when we essentially expand access to processing, as we have, investing nearly $1 billion in new processing capacity, when we encourage local and regional food systems, investing several $1 billion in expanding that opportunity, we expand choice, we create competition, we lower costs. When we put resources from the CCC behind now over 50 projects designed to produce more fertilizer here in the U.S., designed to provide alternatives to fertilizer, designed to enable farmers to have a better opportunity to use the fertilizer they have more efficiently, you see fertilizer costs now moderating. So that's good news. The Renewable Energy for America program I mentioned, part of the CCC or part of the IRA, over 6,600 grants have already been made to farmers, and there are more coming. So there are a wide variety of things that we are doing and have done in an effort to try to lower costs. In addition, the administration's been looking at lowering prescription drug costs for seniors, lowering healthcare costs for families that are struggling. E15, expanding E15 use. That's 25 cents a gallon in many states.
Yeah.
So that's bringing the cost of transportation down. So it's a combination of all these things that you're seeing that inflation rate moderate over time. And I will tell you, if you look at this economy and you compare it to the economies any place else in the world, the question is, what other economy would you rather have than the one we have with record job growth and inflation coming down?
You know, Mr. Secretary, Chip has lost 30 pounds. I have lost 10 pounds. Honestly, this is the best I've seen you look. Are you losing as well? Are you working out like we are?
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm not working out the way you are. But when your doctor tells you you're carrying a little extra, there's not much you can do. And more importantly, when your wife basically says, "Hey, I want you around for a while."
There you go.
Well, you're looking good, Mr. Secretary, honestly.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I wanted to tell you also, Secretary Vilsack, we're at a Trust in Beef ranchers tour down in Stillwater right now. And we're talking about sustainability. It's a sustainable ranchers tour down here. So it's right up your alley. It's put me in the right mood to talk with you. That's for sure.
Well, listen, again, at the end of the day, we want to keep people in business. And one way to keep people in business is creating a new value-added opportunity, which also opens up new revenue streams and new ways to be innovative. One of the exciting things that I've seen from livestock is what's being done with manure. Basically, I was in a dairy operation in Wisconsin the other day. They are taking their manure, they put it through a digester, they are selling the methane to a renewable natural gas operation. They're taking the balance of what's left and they're using it for bedding. When the bedding is used up, they put it through another process in which they extract a phosphorus fertilizer and a nitrogen fertilizer, two separate kinds of fertilizer, which they're applying on their own land, reducing their fertilizer costs. And at the end, what they have left is water pure enough to put into the Wisconsin streams and rivers, which, as you know, is not an easy task. So this is the future. And by the way, this is an outfit that is essentially producing their own cheese that they're selling in the local and regional food market. Why do they do that? So they get 75 cents of the food dollar instead of the 20 cents they get when cheese is sold at the local Walmart or dollar store. So at the end of the day, to me, this is I know it's challenging and I know people are, stressed out about a lot of things, but to me, this is an incredibly innovative time for agriculture. And that's why we want to make sure we get things, we get it right with the Farm Bill. And we also set up the table for future farm bills so that we can maintain more income streams for farmers.
If I could have just 30 more seconds of your time here, I just want to ask you one last thing. If you could, well, of course you can, what message are you sending to Chairs Stabenow and Thompson regarding the Farm Bill? What message are you sending them?
It's get realistic. Make sure that the expectations are right-sized with the limited resource constrained environment we're in. I mean, I'm dealing with reduced budgets. So like on the one hand, you're reducing budgets. On the other hand, you're saying we can put $53 billion of additional. I mean, the math doesn't work. So let's make sure expectations are appropriate. And then let's be creative. Let's figure out, creative ways to use CCC. Let's move the money into the Farm Bill, but do it in a way that doesn't jeopardize the climate smart aspect of it. Let's look at ways in which we can be more efficient with some of the programs. Let's be creative about this instead of, the expectations are pretty high out there.
Yeah.
And I just don't see how they can be met absent new money coming in from some source other than taking it from the SNAP program or taking it from the CCC and basically inflating the savings. That just doesn't compute for me anyway.
Gotcha. Secretary Vilsack, you've been very generous. Thank you so much for making time for us. We're going to be back with more of the Free for All here in a moment.
All right. Take care, guys.